Hi guys, I'm Ruth from Beltane Gifts and welcome to the crafting Chez. Now today we're going to be looking at making one of these, which is a needle felted ball. Now the reason that I like to make these is because they're so useful. You can use them as the foundation for a project, so if I was going to make a small creature or a heart, a square, any sort of shape, I would usually start with one of these. Now the great things about the felted balls is that they're evenly felted throughout, which means all the fibres are all interconnected. So when you create your next shape out of them, all the fibres pull in different directions, but they're evenly felted, so you get a nice smooth finish and surface to it. You can also use them as they are. They're great for mobiles or for displays, or to have your characters sitting on them, make snowmen, whatever you like out of them really. So to make one of those you're going to need three main things. The first one is something to felt on. So for me, I tend to use these. These are felting bags. So it's a cloth bag that's been sewn up, sewn around the edges. You just fill it with just normal dry rice, and these create a great surface for felting on, just because your needle can easily go through into the bag without damaging your table surface, whatever you're working on, but it doesn't damage the needle either, which is what we really want. You are also going to need some felting needles. Not sure if you can see these, I'll put a close-up later. These are generic felting needles. So when I say generic, it means they're not gauged. So with needle felting needles, it's the gauge that tells you the thickness of the needle you'll be using. And the higher the gauge number, the finer the needle. With the generic needles, instead it goes by length. So we have the longest needle is the thickest needle. In my case, I colour code that as red. The next size down, colour coded as yellow. It's the medium length and it's a medium thickness. So the last one is the finest needle, that's colour coded as green, and it's also the shortest needle. And what I would do if I was working, I would start with my raw fibre and the red needle, bring it down into a shape. Once it starts coming together and the needle starts sticking, swap over to one of these, the yellow needle, which would help to bring things in further, and then to finish off and to do the finer detail and the real sort of shaping and smoothing out finished piece, I would use the green needle. Now you don't need to have them all in handles if you don't want to. You can have just one handle and swap the needles out, or you can have multiple needles in multiple handles like I do. It just makes it quicker and easier for me when I'm working. And last but definitely not least are these. So these are finger protectors. They're made of leather. I have looked for alternative materials for these, but at the moment these seem to be doing the best job. So these are just two little fingers, like the opposite of fingerless gloves, and these go onto the thumb and the index finger of the hand that's going to be holding your work. So if you're right-handed, you'll be stabbing with your right hand and you'll be holding with your left hand, vice versa if you're left-handed. Okay, so those are the basics. Now I've got here a couple of different balls, and you can probably tell by the size they use the same amount of fibre, but they're different sizes. Now if I was going to do a finished piece of just a ball, I would probably felt it kind of this thickness. There's still a bit of squishiness to it. You can make it denser if you want to. If you're going to shape your ball into something you want to use later, go for kind of like the thickness of a large marshmallow. Yeah, it's just kind of squishy, perfect for reshaping because you've still got a lot of give in it, but the fibres are still securely felted together. So if I try to pull them apart, they're still nice and attached there. Okay. So I've got a little video coming up now of me disembodied hands felting away, just showing you the basics of how to felt a ball. Now I do rabbit quite a lot over the top of it. Feel free to mute it if you want to. I had tried to put in some kind of just some basics on how to get the right shape. Now if you wanted more detail though on how to felt and the different things that you'll need, different materials, fibres and things, I have got a link just down below that's got all the details on my website, so just click on that, go there, have a bit of a read if you want to. You don't need to, you can get on with just the basics materials there, and you can just felt whatever you want to just with those. I personally just went straight into it, but if you feel like you would like a bit more information, just give that a quick read first. Also, whilst you're at it, there's a subscription button, just click on subscribe, there's a little bell icon. If you click on that, that will just get you a heads up when I'm doing my next videos. What I'm planning to do, start off with the balls, then we're going to go into some basic shapes. Once you've got the basic shapes down, I'm going to be doing a bigger project. So if you want to click on, there's a link down to my Instagram, there's some of the different creations that I've made. If you wanted to go and have a look at those, I'm hoping to do one of the big projects, probably going to be a unicorn. So once you've got your basics down, I'll do a step by step so that you can follow along with me and create a unicorn as well. Here's the wool fibre. Now for the wool fibre I'm using about 2.5 grams of tops, wool tops. So if you watch now, what we're doing is we're going to be splitting that up, because the fibre we're using, all the fibres are going in one direction, which is going to be really tricky to felt together. So we're going to mess those up first. So just speeding things up a little bit. Pull all the fibres out so you're getting the natural lengths there. And what we're going to do is make a big pile of those ready for us to mess up, which we're going to be doing next. There we go. So pull the fibres apart and twist them around, keep messing them up. The messier the fibres are, the smoother the finish is going to be. So get lots and lots of movement into that, lots of pulling, lots of twisting. As I say, just go to town on it, have fun, make it as messy as you can. Pull, pull, pull. There we go. So if you see any sections that are still sticking together, just pull those apart. Remember to keep twisting. What we want is those fibres going in all different directions. The more directions they're going in, the better. So now once you've got all that fluffiness, just roll it together between your palms, and that's going to give you more of a ball shape to start with. So, said finger protectors, got to protect those fingers. You've got a slightly bigger one that goes on your thumb, slightly narrower one goes on your index finger. These are going on the hands that's going to be holding your fibre. See, there's the needles there. We've got red for large, yellow for medium, and green for small. We're going to be starting with the largest needle. Going to pinch there gently between finger and thumb. We don't want to squish. If you squish the fibres, what will happen is when you start felting, those fibres will be closer together where you're pinching them, and that's going to create a flat area, which we don't want. We want a ball for this. Notice as well how I'm keeping all my other fingers out of the way. Now the natural tendency is to curl your hand up and just to hold it in the whole hand. You mustn't do that. If you do that, you will stab through your fibres and then stab into your fingers. So there I'm just catching the fibres and just tucking them in. At the moment we're mainly stabbing straight down. There we go, just all over that bit of fibre there, and then rotating it so that we can get to the other sides. That's because all the fibres are really fast spread out at the minute. We want them closer together. The closer they are, the more they felt together, but we don't want to squish them, so we're just doing it really gradually. There we go, just catching those bits that are sticking up more than others. And there's that really wispy bit as well, which is just over on the right hand side, so we're going to get that in just a minute. Here we go. Now notice how when stabbing, I'm stabbing the needle in and bringing it out at the same angle, and we're just going to speed things up a bit now. So whenever you stab, always stab it in and bring it out at the same angle, otherwise you're going to risk breaking your needle. And what I tend to do is stab between 7 and 10 times in each section before I rotate it, and you want to rotate it on all the different angles, so rotate it left and right, rotate it up and down. You're aiming for a sphere, so notice there I'm just stabbing at the different angles. Once your fibre starts coming in together, what we want to do is always aim with the point of your needle towards the centre of your ball. You'll find that if you just kept stabbing from one angle, what would happen is you would just flatten your ball. We don't want a cube at this point, we want a nice evenly felted sphere. So there we go, stabbing just towards the centre there, rotate it, stab down towards the centre, and notice how the angle of the needle is changing once it's out of the ball. Just to stab in again just towards that centre bit there, Always aim for bits that stick out more than others. You don't want to be stabbing the bits that are already flattened in. You'll just end up with valleys then. What we want to do is nice even coverage of the whole ball, and at this point I'm still using that big needle and I'm stabbing right into the centre of the ball, and that's because what we want is the whole ball to be evenly felted. There we go, going around the edges, stabbing in, rotate, stabbing again. And you'll notice there are some kind of corners, flat bits. Those are the bits you're going to aim for. You'll also notice every now and then I'll just pause, and that's when I'm having a look just to see the sort of overall shape of the ball. There we go, just catching those bits, tucking them. Now you'll start to notice that this is starting to come together quite well, and the way you can tell is that when you stab in, the fibres all around where you're stabbing start getting tucked in as well, so you'll notice you'll get a bigger divot as you stab. There we go, looking around, just looking for any areas that need an extra bit of stabbing. Now when you're doing this, take it slowly. You'll be able to build up speed over time, and it just takes a little bit of practice just to remember to keep turning it quite regularly. When you start off, what you could do is count. You count 7 stabs and then turn again, just until you get used to it. There you go. See, notice how those stabs are really moving the fibres now. So I think, yep, it's time to just swap to another needle. So swapping down one, this is the medium needle, so I've marked that in yellow. And notice how the needle's going in, seems to be going in a lot deeper, and it's not causing as much of a divot, and that's because the needle's finer, so it's slipping between those fibres that we felted together now. And still we're always trying to point towards kind of the centre of the ball, and the reason we're doing that is that will give us that nice rounded shape. If you were to stab straight down and go right to the edges, what you would do is be flattening that area, which is not what we want. There we go, working over the whole thing. We're going to speed things up again in a minute. It's quite satisfying to watch actually, as you see all the fibres get tucked in. Now don't worry at this point if you're finding you are getting areas that are a bit flatter than others. Basically the ball is really fluffy in areas and quite tight in other areas, so when you're stabbing it, if it seems to be flattening down quite a lot in one area, that's just because it's starting to be pulled in. What we want is just to get everything to a reasonable squishiness really. If you give it a squeeze between your finger and thumb and just kind of feel the difference in the areas, you'll be able to see too that some bits will be sticking out more than others and look a bit more wispy, so those are the areas we're going to aim for. Okay, so having another look, just looking for bits that are sticking up and just aiming for those bits. You'll notice again that this needle is starting to cause those bigger divots and making a bigger change in the fibre when you stab. Now we're getting to the point where we're going to be swapping over needles again, I think, but we'll just keep going for a little while longer. Just pull in those last bits. Go, rotating again. Don't be afraid to rotate your work as you go, just so that it's in a comfortable position for you. I mean, I'm right-handed, so I tend to work from the right towards the left. If you're left-handed, you can swap and do it the other way. If you prefer to stab from the back, do that too. You'll find you'll get your own comfortable way of felting over time. I tend to do it this way just so that it's easier for you guys to see, and also for me to see. You want to be able to see where you're stabbing. The danger if you stab from behind is that you're not actually going to see where you're stabbing. Okay, we're swapping over there to our green needle. Now this is our finest needle, so see again how the needle's actually slipping in a lot easier. That's because it's again much finer, so it's not catching as many of those fibres. We still want to keep stabbing right to the centre at this point.
just because we want to make sure it's firmly felted throughout. Once we have got that nice firmness throughout, you'll find that everything starts to come together a lot quicker. So lighter stabs after that, but we're still going right into the centre at this point. Okay, you can see how the fibres are getting tucked in. Go speeding up again. Yeah, this isn't my natural felting, it's a little bit quicker than it should be. There we go, and just aiming for areas that are sticking out more than others. And as those holes seem to be showing up, that shows you that you've felted enough. You get into that point where you're ready to start going a little bit lighter. Now if you wanted to stick with just quite a evenly felted ball, you can stick with it there. If you wanted to go further and make it very dense, you can do. I'm doing these quite lightly, mainly because I'm going to be using these to turn into other shapes. So these will work on their own, they're going to hold their shape, they're not going to change again. I'm just going over again, see how I'm not stabbing too deeply. This is just to neaten up the edges, just to make sure I haven't got any of those tiny little wispy bits going on, nothing sticking out. Now this really light felting over the top is just for smoothing and just for giving a nice finish. It's not going to be changing the thickness of the ball, it's still going to be nice and squishy and able to be shaped. It's just for aesthetics at this point. And speeding up again. So at this point, just look out for any sort of areas that just need that little bit more attention. If you've got kind of areas where there's strands that are sticking out, aim for those. Then just have a look as well, take that moment just to stop and just see if there's any bits that need your attention. If they're not, you can stop. If there are, just give it that last few stabs. Go, and just one last roll between your palms. What this does is it just spreads everything out, it just finishes off, gets it that nice round shape. And there you go, there's your ball. That's ready to be used as a ball, or you can change it later on into any other shape you like.
Okay, thanks a lot, bye.